Be patient. All things are difficult before they become easy. Hey you! Yes, you who's watching our vlog tutorial. You might be probably eating right now, am I right? Or, nah, I'm not eating because I've actually forgotten what eating is due to enormous numbers of tasks I need to finish. But oof, that's so bad. Well, get up there for a while, drink some water, and grab some food, okay? Okay. Before we reach the main content, we'd really appreciate if it hit the like, plus subscribe, plus notification bell. Continuously support us. Salamat! Now, I've got a question for you. Ever wondered why the product you frequently buy on stores, which others also tend to buy too, does not easily run out of stocks? And even if it does, it is only within a very short period of time due to its high demand. Like today, you and the person who also badly wants that product are almost exchanging faces, souls, and even the body itself just for you to get that product you desperately want. But then, on the following day or two, voila! The product reappeared. How is that even possible? Actually, it is the application of inventory. Its goals are ensuring a continuous supply of materials and stock so that production should not suffer at the time of customers' demand, and avoid both overstocking and understocking of inventory. Plus, maintain the availability of materials whenever and wherever required in enough quantity. It is a very important asset of every business to run its day-to-day operations constantly. So in an inventory, we have these terms, the inbound and the outbound. These terms refer to the transportation and movement of goods throughout the supply chain. The inbound covers the receiving of goods and raw materials from suppliers to businesses, while the outbound encompasses the delivery of goods and products to the end customer. Since you already understood the basic concept of inventory, let's head on to the climax. This vlogtorial is actually about utilizing data warehousing and online analytical processing, or OLAP, in a very fun and informative way using a very powerful software, Microsoft Excel. In the real world of business, it is big data that we are dealing with already. You may think, how do such companies manage to maintain the inventory to avoid concerns such as stock runouts? When reading and analyzing that huge amount of data is a great struggle. Prepare thyself as you're about to witness our product inventory's multidimensional data of Soju varieties. There you have it! Now what do you see, or what does your mind tell you? Is it kinda overwhelming? Or too overwhelming? Can you interpret it directly just by looking at it? Or is it very confusing and incomprehensible? Actually, what you see is an environment of an information systems architectural construct, or data warehouse. Data warehousing is the electronic storage of a large amount of information by a business or organization. It is a vital component of business intelligence that employs analytical techniques on business data. It provides users with current and historical decision support information which is difficult to access or present in the traditional operational data store. We, the SANDBOXERIST logistics, are one of the many decision makers that utilize Microsoft Excel spreadsheets, especially in data warehousing. For those who don't know or take this masterpiece for granted, MS Excel is a spreadsheet program used to record and analyze numeric and statistical data, providing multiple features to perform various operations. Excel spreadsheets are frequently used in data warehousing applications to access and present data. It is powerful, flexible, and relatively inexpensive tools that many decision makers, including us, are comfortable using. OLAP, which stands for Online Analytical Processing, performs multidimensional analysis of business data and provides the capability for complex calculations, trend analysis, and sophisticated data modeling, allowing users to identify observed trends and then drill down to discover the details behind those trends for better decision making. It is a technology that is used to organize large business databases and support business intelligence. OLAP databases are divided into one or more cubes, and each cube is organized and designed by a cube administrator to fit the way that you retrieve and analyze data so that it is easier to create and use the pivot table reports and pivot chart reports that you need. Excel provides pivot table capabilities that allows users to separate facts, which are numeric data to be summed, from dimensions used for filtering, sorting, and grouping. Wanna know? Here's how. Oh, and if you want to learn and understand more about OLAP, you can by watching other informative videos within this channel. Going back, here's how to create pivot tables. But before that, please, it is a must that you should understand your data very, very well, especially if it's multidimensional, since it will get more complicated if you don't have knowledge about it. In this case, we're seeing here a lot of fields, attributes, and of course the numbers. So, allow me to show you the entity relationship diagram, or the ERD, for you to appreciate what's happening with these numbers, with these tables. And of course, we'd really love to see the relationship between them. So you can see here, this one in between, the received, that is our fact table. The other tables on the side, such as the product, warehouse, customer, and so on, are what we called dimensions. As a person who's in charge of data warehousing like this one, you have knowledge and you understand on what's completely going on. Even just by looking at these tables, you know that this is the inventory, this is the received table, wherein you have the data for the inbound and you also have the data for the outbound. Same goes with other tables, so you can see here. But as for the executives or for the higher ups within the business or in the companies, they don't have that much time to track and where the foreign keys or what's the relationship between this and that table. They only care about what this data tells, or what's the story behind this data, since that's what they're after too, for a better decision making. You need to make sure that this data is formatted as a table. When you try to input something in Excel, it is not automatically formatted as a table. To do so, you're gonna highlight this one here in the home. You can see here, format as table. So you can choose whatever design you want, and then voila! You now have your table. You can change its name and other properties. So let's delete this one since this is just for example purposes. Okay, but once you have formatted this one, make sure, since what we're creating is a pivot table, we need to make sure that this is added to the data model. So if this is not added yet, this is what you're going to do. You're going to highlight and add to data model. So we're expecting here a notification. There we have it, which in that my table has already been added to the data model, since I've already added all of it already. Okay, so you can see here below. I'm sorry. You can see here. Those are the lists of the tables that I've already added in our data model. Okay, and once you've done that, once you've added all of your table, then we can proceed with step number 2. The pivot table and chart making. As you can see here, we have our pivot tables along with their corresponding charts. So on how to make it, provided here, sheet for our samples. You can find it here on the insert. You have the pivot table. We're just gonna click OK. Remember, in creating the pivot table, you need to be careful in identifying their relationships, since that's very crucial. But for this version, I'm using MS Excel 365. It can auto-detect and create relationships. Okay, so you don't need to manually do it. For those who don't have that kind of version, you can locate it here, the pivot table analyze ribbon, and click relationships. Then you're just gonna add one, or you can manually do it. But again, for this version, you have the option of auto detect. Okay, so now we're gonna create a pivot table that will help us see the total sales in volume per warehouse. Okay, so we're gonna need the warehouse name. We're gonna use the warehouse name and the delivered quantity rather, I'm sorry. Okay, there you have it. So this is just one of the many things that this pivot table can do. What's great about this one is that it also has an option on inserting a recommended pivot table. So we're just going to highlight on which table you want to interpret or get information of. Then it will show suggestions here. On the pivot chart making, we're just going to click our pivot table, and we have the option here, pivot chart, wherein you're free to choose on what relevant chart you're going to use. So for this one, I'm going to use the pie chart. Okay, so what we have here is a filter wherein you have the option on what, in this case, warehouse, you just want to present on the chart. So if I'll uncheck this one, we'll only present these two warehouses. Okay, so that's what the filter does. And for this part, we have the option here on the chart, or you can find here on the chart, in the design ribbon, wherein you can show the percentage or it allows you to show the percentage. But what if you also want to see here on your pivot table the same percentage? So what we're going to do here is just we're going to right click and show field list. If you still want this to remain for you to see the exact value, then you can leave it as it is. And what we're going to do is just we're going to add the same attribute. There. It's just that you right click this one, show values as percentage of column total. So there it goes. You can now see the percentage here on the pivot table itself. So you can check it through the pivot chart. Okay, but again, if you don't want to see the percentage anymore since you find it redundant, you can just remove it like that. Okay, so that's how to create pivot tables and pivot charts. As for the delivery of OLAP to end users, MS Excel also provides graphing capabilities that permit the end user to present information in chart and graph formats. Here we can see the pivot charts that we created based on our pivot tables. Although this is quite organized, still it is not that presentable and easy to read, especially for the executives and for the higher ups. So we're gonna create a dashboard for this, but before that, let's first interpret and analyze this pivot tables. The same with our example. This pivot table is about getting the total sales in volume nationwide per warehouse, while the other one is in peso. The only thing that differs for this one we need to remember is the attribute that we're going to use. That's why we really need to be careful, and we need to identify first on what story or what information are we really trying to get. As for this pivot table, this is a combination of the two pie charts that were presented. Also here we can see who warehouses the products that were manufactured and produced by this certain factory. Another pivot table shows the customer count per warehouse, and as you can see here, we'll notice this blank. If we want to know the details about it, we're just gonna double click, and there you have it. You can see that that's why it doesn't belong to a specific warehouse. It's because the order got cancelled, or this specific customer cancelled an order. Another pivot table shows the supply and the demand per warehouse, or also called as throughput. Try to look at this pivot table. Here, we want to find out on what day of the week does this warehouse have most number of sales. And as you can see here, the days of the week always appears or reappears in every warehouse, so it's kinda not a good table. Okay, so instead of having a table like this, we have this, which is what we call the slicer. Here on the report connections, we have the options to choose which pivot table you want your slicer to connect with. Just make sure that they have a relationship. If none, then the slicer will not function the way it is meant to be. To create one, just simply go to the insert and you can find there slicer. Then go to the data model and simply choose what attribute you're going to use as your slicer. Performance dashboard, a front end to data warehouses that summarize in graphical format how a business is performing against its measurable goals and objectives. Here we can see the charts or the pivot charts that we have created, yet this is way more organized. We can now easily see the sales trend for us to identify when the company is selling high. We also have here a uniform legend for the 3 graphs wherein we're getting the total sales per warehouse in terms of volume and peso, and on the other graph it shows the total transactions. Then we have the slicer if you want to know on this particular day of the week. Then when we click this one, the graph automatically changes. Going down, we have the throughput and the customer count. As for the throughput, this chart shows how much of the manufactured products were sold for each warehouse. As you can see here, it is almost the same, but the idea is that there shouldn't be a huge difference for the colors or for the demand and the supply, because if there is, that would mean many products were stocked. Either they were damaged, not delivered, or cancelled, or even the worst. We also have a slicer here for the products, wherein if you're going to click or choose one, the throughput bar graph and the sales trend changes. As you can see here, that's the work of the slicer. And that's it! Hope you learned a lot and had fun at the same time in this vlog tutorial about utilizing data warehousing and online analytical processing with Microsoft Excel as our software. By the way, I attached our file for you to continue on exploring about OLAP and data warehousing. Just please don't forget the credits, okay? The struggle was so real when we populated that data. Truth revelation. Okay, muchas gracias. Bye!